Alright guys, we are back for day 3 of fixing Fire Emblem Heroes. I am of course your boy Tacho here, and our topic of discussion today is going to be modes in the game. So of course, IntSys for whatever reason does not have their finger on the pulse of what the player base actually wants in this game, which is more PVE content, more challenging PVE content, more places where they can use their favorite characters that they've built up and actually have fun in a difficult environment, but not like toxic environment like in the case of summoner duels and things like that. Like, people don't want to be in a position where they're competing against whales that have spent thousands of dollars in the game and they've got all the recent stuff at plus 10 with all the busted passive skills. It's going to be impossible to compete with that, right? So like, no one wants to have to compete against that. They would rather play against the computer, the CPU, where they can actually devise a strategy if they tackle the map multiple times and come up with like ways around any BS that may be on the map. So why don't we start by taking a look at the mainstay modes in the game right now. So of course, IntSys, they really love their PvP for some reason. I don't know why that is. Like, that's not really what gets people into Fire Emblem in the first place. PvP is not even a part of the main games, right? Like, they have it, but it's always like at the end, and it's always optional, and it's always completely ignored for the most part. Like, most people, if they're playing Fire Emblem, once they beat the game, they might go back and do a second run with different characters, or do a second route in the case of 3 houses or fates or something. So PvP is not really what people want to do in this game. So Aether Raids, of course, is one of the mainstays and probably the most popular out of all the PvP modes. I would say the concept of Aether Raids is actually very good because, of course, you're able to build your own defense team, and it's just fun, like constructing a new defense and then seeing how other players deal with it, like how they manage all of the traps you put up in place, or like all the different ways you can catch enemies off guard. It's always fun to like see what people make of defenses, and I think that's also why they show defense replays, so people can just get some enjoyment out of watching people suffer against their defense. Unfortunately, Aether Raids is a complete wash right now because Emblem is just unstoppable for the most part. And even if you have a map that is built specifically to deal with Emblem, you are so far in on dealing with him that you're weak to basically every other strategy, like gale forcing and such. So it's just like really not good anymore. And not too many people take Aether Raids seriously. We have a lot of players in the Vault of Heaven, but a lot of them bounce back and forth between being in the vault and not being in. And then the people that are like actually maintaining Vault of Heaven are very few and far between. So there we go with AR. We have Summoner Duels, which even less people care about. This is probably the most hated out of all the PvP modes, because of course you're directly competing against other whales that have like plus 10s and all the crazy skills and like plus 10 emblem rings for extra stats. It's just like, it's a nightmare for a lot of casual players, where especially the favorites that they've built up are just getting annihilated. So like this mode, I want to say about like 500 people maybe are taking it really serious, and they are the ones bouncing up and down between rank 1 and not being rank 1. Alright, then we have Arena, of course. Now, Arena has certainly gotten a lot of upgrades, and it's a lot more manageable and enjoyable nowadays than it was back, like way back, when you had to get all the KOs with a bonus hero, and you had to have the legendary hero at plus 10 for 3 separate seasons. Nowadays, you don't really need to do any of that. If you've got the bonus legendary hero, that's it. Like, you can just run them as your bonus and then run a blessing corresponding to that hero on the rest of your team, and you're good to go, right? As long as the rest of those guys are plus 10. You can actually score high enough to maintain the crowns just doing that. So it's a lot more free-to-play friendly nowadays, and the bonus KOs aren't that much difficult to get, but of course toxicity can bleed its way into this mode as well. If, I don't know, let's say the enemy had all plus 10 Emblemites, like a 4-team Emblemite with all plus 10s, all Breath of Life, and all that nonsense. Good luck getting a bonus KO against that, right? So there is still a lot of issues with this mode, and not too many people take it super serious, but it's not that difficult. It's probably the most like easily accessible mode, as long as you know how to score in here. But they do a terrible job explaining how to score themselves, so that is also a problem. Okay, then we have the special maps. Now, this is more so on the PvE side of content. This is what you'd expect, right? Like, this is Fire Emblem at its finest. You go into a map, Obviously, there's going to be reinforcements, which is what the series is known for. Permadeath is on in here, technically, because if you lose a unit, that's it. You lose the entire map. And I do think that's a good way to handle PvE in this game, because, of course, reinforcements and permadeath, right? Like, that's what we want out of Fire Emblem. The problem, though, is that you only clear the map once, and then that's pretty much it. Like, there are rewards, of course. You're getting copies of the Grand Hero Battle unit. You're getting some feathers. You're getting maybe a little bit of orbs here and there. But it's just one and done. And as good as these contents are, as good as these maps are, and as much, like, love and attention they put into them in the old days, like, this is an example of one of the first... Actually, Narshan was the first out of all of the Grand Hero Battle maps. And you look at this map design here. They were very cognizant of, like, how to design a map and make it, like, difficult in terms of map design with also enemy spawns. Like, look at where you spawn and then Narshan flies over here. If you try to get a flyer to fly up there, the archer is just going to demolish them. So they wanted you to go around the mountain and then get to Narshan that way. So, like, day one, of course, we had to play by those rules. We didn't have busted units that just break the game and break the foundations of the game that, like, don't care, like, flyers that just don't care about bows. Color advantage means nothing now, like, things like that. All of that is not good for the game design, and it's not good for a strategy game at that. So, like, the power creep we've got right now is just not promoting good map design or good game design when you could just crush everything so easy. So, I mean, these maps are good. This is where a lot of people like to make YouTube content on, but it's very hard to generate any interest in that right now, given, like I said before, how easy it is to just demolish these. All right, then we have Forging Bonds, another good PvE mode, because this is also accentuating something that is very well known in Fire Emblem, which is the characters and their interactions. Support conversations were one of the best things they ever added into these games. Nowadays, we also have the dating sim aspects with, like, waifus and husbandos. You get your S-rank support, and then you marry a character, which a lot of people like. A lot of the newcomers to Fire Emblem definitely like. They probably are more on board with that than the actual strategy department of it. So, like, they would rather have fun with their favorites and see, like, fun dialogue than actually do, like, a fun strategy map like the Grand Hero Battle stuff. So, these are good because, of course, more dialogue is good, more character interactions between characters from the main series that never got to interact. Like, Jafar and also Karel would be a cool conversation to have. I mean, it would be, like, mostly just ellipses, but it would have been cool to see them have a conversation, because they never talked in actual FE7. Alright, then we have more PvE content here. We have Hall of Forms, which is one of the most revered and most beloved of all of the PvE content in this game. Unfortunately, it's only once a month, I believe it is, so it's not always around, which is unfortunate. But the general idea of this is very good, where you start off with a fresh batch of units, and then you have to build them as you're progressing through the tower. So a lot of strategy involved there, and also can be difficult depending on what characters we have available and what sort of enemies are spawning in. So you climb all the way to the top, and then once you finish, if you have a Form of Soul, you can even take it a step further and purchase one of the characters that you just built up, which is a really good concept and really awesome stuff. So, like, this mode is amazing. Seer Snare is also a very well-regarded mode where we're also just building characters, but it's not a random assortment in here. It's actually characters we've already built ourselves that we bring in, and then as we go along, we're unlocking passives that we have on them and also buying new passives to put on them. So, really good mode here. Of course, it has a problem where you can only play so much at one time. On day one, you can only do, like, 10 fights, and then after that, it's only, like, 5 fights per day. So, would have been nice if this was a little bit longer, and maybe we could just play as much as we wanted to our heart's content on the first day. But then we would just, like, beat it, and that would be it. So, there you guys go. That's a general gist of, like, some of the more prominent modes in the game and what we have going on. So, recently, they actually released this mode, United Warfront, which I want to pull up real quick. So, this was the co-op mode that we all so desperately wanted, and it's more of just like a chain challenge with legendary and abyssal maps. I want to say legendary, mythic, and emblem maps. So, chain challenges are cool. Of course, we play the story maps and we go through those, and it's a little bit more difficult because the enemies have higher stats, maybe better skills and things like that, which is the case here. However, it's still not hard enough, unfortunately. what would have been really cool about this, actually, I think it would not be difficult at all for them to fix this mode up and make it like a real PvE contender. So it's similar to Arena Assault, where you go in with a squad, and then after the fight, the 4 units that you selected cannot be selected again for the next set of fights that you have to do. So units only get 1 usage here, which is really good. And I think if this was like unlimited, like maybe a survival mode where we just clear as many of these maps as we can. So Abyssal content, of course, have the Abyssal difficulty, please, instead of just Infernal. So we would go through all of the legendary maps, all the mythic maps, and all the emblem maps in random order, of course, just to like spice things up a bit. And every time you clear a map, the 4 units that you selected are no longer available to use. Of course, this is where the co-op aspect comes into play, because you're able to borrow some characters from friends and have them help you out there. So even if you don't have the craziest box, you're still able to borrow units and get through it that way. And have it be survival, like play until we cannot clear a map anymore. Like our units just no longer are able to compete. And then once we lose, we get like set rewards based on how many maps we actually cleared. I think that would be awesome. That would be really good for sure. Would definitely play up the difficulty and would also allow us to use a lot of our barracks roster, which would be really awesome. We don't get to use like all of our characters very often. Even in Arena Assault, we're just using like, what is it, 27 out of... How many characters are in the game? 1,100? So I think this would be a really cool concept here for survival mode for this. Now, of course, I've also been talking about my own mode that I've wanted for a very long time now, the Tower of Volney and also the Lagdo Ruins from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. One of the coolest additions to that game, where it's very different from Fire Emblem, where typically in Fire Emblem games you just beat the maps, or you beat the story and that's pretty much it. If you want to play more, you play another round of story, you start a new game, and then you use maybe different characters or play a different route. But in the case of Sacred Stones, you had the option of the Creature campaign, where you could still continue to play the game even after you beat it, and you are able to build up your characters more, get the rest of your support conversations and stats to max level and all of that stuff. So, like, this mode was really good and really fun, added a lot of lifespan to the game. So, we take a look here, how these work. They have set maps, so a set number of maps. I believe this one is 8. Yep, okay, so we go through 8 floors in the Tower of Volney, and with every map that we do, there is different map design here. Well, they are stagnant, actually, like round 1 is always this, round 2 is always this, and so on and so forth. But for sure, if they had this in FEH, they could mix it up a bit and have, like, randomized maps. And we're fighting the monster enemies, right? So, like, remember those guys? Remember these enemies, how cool they were? I believe they had them in Awakening and Echoes as well. Awakening only had the Risen, though, like those guys with the, like, pillow sheet ghost look. They had, like, a big, like, curtain over them, and then they were just, like, zombies, basically. But these guys, like, they had some awesome designs, right? Like, this was from Sacred Stones. I love these dudes. So we have the skeleton guys, of course. We got the Cerberus guys. We got this dude here. He's a centaur. We got the eyeballs. We got the... another centaur there. We've got zombies. There were so many more, too. There were, like, gargoyles. There were Medusa heads and giant spiders and stuff. How cool would that be, right? Like, get these sprites in Fire Emblem Heroes and have us fight against them in a mode. That would be really cool. So, like, Tower of Volney, I think, would be awesome. And as far as rewards go, it would be, like, unlimited. So we would be playing this mode to our heart's content while grinding up stuff like Hero Feathers and Heroic Grails and also Refinement Stones and things like that. Things that we need to build up our account. So that way newcomers have a way to actually, like, get stuff that they can use to build up their accounts, and then longtime players still get something out of it, right? Like, you're getting Heroic Grails, which you can use to, like, purchase more characters and things like that. So it's a win-win for everybody. And then, of course, the Lagdo Ruins was the same thing. So we go through a set number of floors here. I think this one was 10. Yeah, it's been a while since I've played Sacred Stones. A while, more like, I don't know, like 12, 15 years, something like that. But yeah, 10 floors of Lagdo Ruins. On the final floor, it's actually pretty cool. You fight a bunch of dragons, like fell dragons, which is awesome. I think there's like 8 or 9 or 10 of them, something like that, right? Like, they all spawn in. So that was really cool. And then once you beat them all, you can open the treasure chest and you're done with the map and you get an awesome item for clearing. So, like, that would be really cool, too. The map design here was a little better than the tower because we're fighting, like, outside and then we go inside, down, deeper into the ruins and stuff like that. So just really awesome, really cool stuff. If they handled this correctly in Fire Emblem Heroes, this would be really good. Like, just every time you clear it, basically, you're getting rewards. You're getting something out of it, right? And you can do it as many times as you want. So instead of having it on a timer or having like a set number of rewards like in Tempest Trials, where once you get to 50k, that's pretty much it. And then at that point, you're just grinding for hero merit. How about here? Let's just take away the cap on rewards. Let's just let people play to their heart's content, have a place where they can use their units that they've built up, and just get the maximum amount of enjoyment out of the game while they're fighting against some cool-looking monsters that are nowhere else in the game. And if you want to know, like, how they could monetize this, they could so easily monetize this. Like, have a new weapon type that's maybe super effective damage against monster enemies, or, like, introduce skills that are good in these modes that people would summon for if they want to put those on their favorites, and it has nothing to do with, like, PvP or anything like that. So this could easily be monetized and still, like, give them some revenue out of it. And then also, it's just giving the players more things to do, having more fun with the game, and so on and so forth. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think of the current modes in Fire Emblem Heroes right now? Which ones are you having the most fun with? And I think it's going to be, for a lot of people, like stuff like Forging Bonds, Hall of Forms, things like that, where either we're getting more out of the long-time characters, the revered characters from the series, or having fun with the strategy aspect with, like, building stuff up, as opposed to PvP like this. So this is your boy Tacho signing out. Take care, fellas, and I will catch you guys again on the flip side.